Welcome to What Your CESCL Can Do for You. I'm Dave Jenkins, the chapter president, Pacific Northwest chapter president of the International Erosion Control Association. If you have to drop off early for some reason, you can view this presentation on our YouTube channel, which is accessed through pnwcieca.org. Takes about a week or so to get that posted. Please use chat function for questions and comments, and I'll get to those at the end of the presentation. And with that, let's get started. So, what your CESCL can do for you, which I have since renamed. What do you want a CESCL? What I want a CESCL to do for me? Since I've worked with CESCLs for a long time, I've developed some opinions on what I expect. So I'm assuming that all of you are either CESCLs, are interested in being a CESCL, or are not a CESCL and want to know more what they do. Maybe you're going to hire a third-party CESCL for a project. So that's what we're going to talk about. The CESCL program is recognized in Washington, Alaska, Oregon, and British Columbia. Washington and Oregon are interchangeable. I don't know if Alaska accepts or if they only allow their own certification. Same for British Columbia. Why the CESCL program was developed to improve and increase compliance with lots of regulations, local, state, province, federal water quality requirements and such. A little bit of history of the CESCL program. It was started in the mid-90s. The IECA started voluntary classes for WSDOT for 1 year, 95 to 96. I was hired in early 96 to then develop a program for WSDOT only. So that was in 96. We started requiring training of all contractors, or at least a contractor employee for all contractors that worked for WSDOT. In 2001, WSDOT contracted with AGC of Washington to train non-WSDOT contractors. WSDOT was getting overwhelmed with their program. And in 2002 and 3, AGC Washington updated the program to cover non-WSDOT work. And then 2005, Washington State Department of Ecology included a new BMP for CESCL in their stormwater management manual. AGC Washington updated their training to meet those requirements. At that point, they were the only trainers. And since that time, probably starting in 2006, I think there must be almost 20 different training organizations doing this. So long history. And as I was putting this together, it occurred to me that I'm probably CESCL number 1 since I developed the program so long ago. So whoopee. Oh yeah, I found this is probably the first brochure sent out to contractors to attend the program starting in, our first class is October 15th, 16th, 1996. But anyway. So when is a CESCL required, at least in Washington? Construction sites 1 acre or larger that discharge stormwater to surface waters of the state must have site inspections conducted by a CESCL. The official job description would be something like this. The CESCL would assess site conditions, verify BMP effectiveness, inspect and sample, document, modify the SWIP, and report results to Department of Ecology or whatever your state's regulatory agency is. But the real job description, according to me, is to keep the owner in compliance, keep inspectors happy, prevent citizen complaints, but mainly assess discharge risk. Every time a CESCL goes on site, they should put on their risk assessment hat and look, doesn't matter if it's sunny or raining at the time, look for potential problems so that they can be corrected before they become actual problems. So that's what I'm going to talk about. I'm not going to talk about how to write the inspection reports, how to submit them, any of that sort of stuff. I'm just going to present a lot of examples and talk about risk assessment for each one. Some with really no risk, some with very low risk, some very high risk. And I just want to chat about each one individually. Now, go ahead and put your questions in the chat. We don't have too many attendees here, so I might end up opening it up just for live chat. So we'll see how this goes. So what risk are you assessing? It's discharge risk, discharge of dirty water, sediment, or chemicals, typical of construction sites. So oils, greases, things like that. I'm going to start out with a project near my house, actually, across Puget Sound from Seattle. This is an 18-acre subdivision that started several years ago. They're pretty well built out now. I think they're still building some houses, but it's mostly built out. So I took a series of pictures over probably a year because I drive by this all the time. But so this is the first of the series. And, you can comment on how the silt fence is installed and such, which I'm not going to really go into, but really for risk is what I look at. So it looks like the risk is pretty low from the right. Everything is grassed, although right next to the silt fence on the other side is asphalt, a lot of asphalt. And you can't really tell from the picture, but all of the drainage, except for a little strip on the opposite side of the street, all of the drainage ends up on the project side. So that's telling me that there's definitely some risk of problems brewing. Oh, look at that. Some problems started brewing. Contractor started having a lot of erosion problems along the base of the silt fence. So they moved it, put in check dams. And you can't tell from this, but they pulled up the silt fence near the traffic cone so that water would drain down a temporary ditch they built to drain into their stormwater pond, which, you think about it, the stormwater pond was designed for the project, not to also collect street runoff, a quarter mile of street runoff or whatever it is. So here's later, a few months later, they're starting to prepare to put in sidewalks, curbs, gutters, all that sort of stuff. Still having problems. So they moved the silt fence all the way over to the right and installed sandbag check dams along the roadway. So clearly there was risk of runoff on this, and this is how they're dealing with it. And I'll go into what probably should have been done as a first order of business on this. So another picture of that. The gravel is a stormwater, a catch basin under there. So you can see the steel plate here in the corner where the catch basin is. So silt fence is moved all the way out of the way. Looks like it's poorly installed. You could question whether you even need a silt fence. And by the way, I should have mentioned, when looking at these pictures, I'm looking at them as a Cecil that maybe goes out onto a site once a week. Maybe that's what the contract is with the owner. I just have to go out once a week or after certain rain events. So cold call, basically, you go out when you can and you document what you see. So I've made these are individual cold calls I've made basically. And now I'm seeing, well, what's the point of having the silt fence? And this is one of the things a Cecil should do is let the contractor, let the owner know, here's what I think. The risk of sediment running off the site into the street is about 0 at this point, and actually has been for a few slides there. So another example or another picture, same thing. Okay, now we've got the curbs in. Silt fence is still in, grass has grown 2 feet tall and dried out. Looks like it's summer, so the risk is lower than it was. The risk of rain is pretty low at this point. So let's go back to what should have been done. So this is your first visit to the site, and you notice the grass on the right, you notice the asphalt on the left. So the first thing you think is they need to do something with the road runoff and keep it out of our project. So there's several ways to do that. But you could talk to the contractor and say, look, here's what the issue is. You're going to be managing all this water for months if you don't do something. Can you at least get your curbs in as soon as possible and at least put in a first lift of asphalt between the curb and the existing street. Now you think, you say to yourself, well, you got to put the storm in. Well, you can put pipes in. You can put the catch basins in and cover them up. You don't have to run the curb all the way. You could run brakes and put sandbags in place in the meantime, but you've got to get that street runoff away from your project. Okay, different project. This is a stockpile. Looking at this, what I see is a track walked, hydroseeded slope that's slowly growing grass. There's evidence of erosion at the base before the grass was able to grow, but it's all contained behind the silt fence. There's a pipe slope drain draining any runoff from the top down into a rock splash pad at the base. So this to me is a extremely low risk. And if this is a large project, which it happens to be, this is not something that I would continue to look at. I would move on to other areas of the project from this point on to look at things that are higher risk. Okay, another project, big fill job. It's about 90 feet of fill when they get done with us. And it looks like it's summertime, which is good. But I'm looking at this thinking, why are they not doing anything with the slope? I would recommend that as they build slope, maybe every 20 to 30 feet of elevation of slope, that they track walk it and hydroseed it if they can, but at least track walk it. There is silt fence. You can't really see it on the base of the slope, but there is silt fence down there. Unfortunately, on the left side behind the orange construction fence is wetland. So any failures on this is problematic. So yeah, I would definitely, this would be a high risk potential on this project. If you get a big summer storm, you could have problems. So this is one that I would want to work with the contractor as much as possible to get them to finish up the slopes. Okay, jump to another side. This was a storm connection. And I don't know why they put the silt fence on the left going up the hill. It's not typically done, but silt fence looks like it's installed well. The straw wattles set maybe every 15 feet on contour, staked in well. So I would say this is a pretty low risk. I would watch it, but it's a pretty low risk project at this point. It used to have a high potential risk because of the wetland and there's a creek to the right, but this contractor's done a really good job. Silt fence at the base, which is really where silt fence should be installed at the base of slopes. They've obviously track walked, they've blanketed the slopes. They've started planting, I think, native plants. The curb is in, they haven't installed the sidewalk yet, but curb is in, curb and gutter. So this is a low risk. Would still have to look at it because it is rainy season, looks like on this. So this would definitely be keep an eye on it, but it's pretty low risk at this point. Same here. At some point, it had a high potential creek relocation restoration work. But at this phase of construction, got blankets. We've got a splash pad for the storm discharge, silt fence at the top of the slope to keep staging area runoff diverted away from the creek. Looks like there's been hydroseeding up to the top middle right, which is growing in. So I'd say this is in good shape. And since the creek is flowing, obviously the work is essentially done. They've finished the creek realignment and letting water through. So just looking at this one picture, this has definitely potential. The silt fence going up the slope, probably not necessary, but the silt fence at the base, typically it would be down lower, but in this case, because of what they're doing, they installed it here, and it's actually not quite on contour. They ran it so water would drain down to the end of it into the ditch line. The reason for this is actually on the very right, you can see some plastic. That's a temporary plastic lined stormwater pond with a pump on floats. And then there's a pipe going up the top of the slope into perforated pipe to disperse any turbid water. So just on the surface of this looks like could be a high risk, but with the way that the project was designed and it's being operated, the actual risk of dirty discharge is, unless the pump fails, of course, is about zero. This one, it's a shallow slope. There's not much area involved. There's a little bit of asphalt for runoff, and you can see some rills have formed from road runoff in the center left. The silt fence is probably overkill for this site, but and it looks like it's probably spring or summertime. So the risk on this is low as long as nothing can drain down out through the gate, which it doesn't look like it can. So everything would be contained on this. I do talk to contractors about, look, if you've got this graded, just track walk it and get it covered, just get it done. So, but yeah, this is pretty low risk. This is a little bit baffling. So, and let me just back up again. Again, we're looking at these as, this is the first time we've gone out on each of these sites as a CESCL, and we're determining risk of discharge of dirty water, sediment, or construction type chemicals. So if the silt fence is the project boundary, which it typically is, what's the risk of discharges from this site? It's grass to the left. The work area is actually set down a couple of feet from the existing grade. So there is really no possibility for discharge here. Okay, we're doing all these sites in one day, which is how I used to do inspections. I had, working at the Port of Seattle, I always had lots of projects to look over. Sometimes it was, I don't know, a couple of years we had over $1 billion worth of construction going at any given time. So a lot of the inspections that I would do were drive-by. So it was just a very quick windshield assessment. Do I need to spend time on this or not? So this is one of those. It is wintertime. This is probably January, February. It was a project to clear out blackberries and other invasive species and then replant native plants. So it's a pretty flat site. There's extremely low risk of anything running off this, especially considering as soon as they cleared everything off, they placed mulch, planted the plants, native plants, and left that's actually burlap silt fence with straw wattle on the flap, which was then left in place to rot away rather than removed. So the equipment didn't have to go back in and remove silt fence. So this is one, if I have a lot of projects going on, this is one I would just kind of check off. I might call the contractor once in a while and ask them what they're doing, but probably no need to spend a lot of time on this one. This is kind of a similar situation. It's actually a runway extension. And rather than install silt fence, the contractor installed construction fence for a perimeter boundary and then scraped up the existing grass and sod and pushed it off into a berm. So that was their erosion control. So everything is contained on this. once they're done paving, the sod will be backbladed and tapered into the edge of the asphalt and hydroseeded. But with all the grass surrounding for hundreds of feet in any direction, really, this also is a low risk. This one looks like it could be high risk. I would get out and walk this one and figure out what's going on. But I do know what's going on this one, so I'll tell you. It's a taxiway relocation. It's pretty small area. Airfield is really flat with lots of runoff, but there's also lots of grass, existing grass. So this type of work area, it's pretty easy to isolate. And you can kind of tell up near the top center, there's a flex pipe or flex hose, and that's connected to a 6-inch pump on a float. So water that's to the right, which is upstream of the project and clean, is pumped around the project. And then the site water, the dirty water that's really caused by rain and some runoff from taxiways, is contained within a compost berm, which will be spread out later and hydroseeded when the work's done. So this is one to watch, but as long as the systems are functional, the pump is bypassing and things like that, then this is low to medium risk, I would say. Okay, some utility work. This is, I believe, installing a sewer connection in the middle of the street. Project is to the right. It's a large building project. So the street going up to the upper right corner of the picture, water is draining down toward the work area. And what the contractor has done is installed temporary asphalt berms. They're directing the clean water down to a catch basin to the left in the curb line across the street. And then the work area is also surrounded with the asphalt. So any water in the work area goes to this sump pump and is pumped back into the site for infiltration. So depending on time of year and how the contractor is working, this is one that I would keep an eye on, but it would definitely be a drive-by for my experience. Wouldn't spend a lot of time on it. So, and it's pretty quick work, it's maybe a couple days if nothing goes wrong. Okay, so this one, this is part of a very large multi-year project. And this looks like it's probably spring or fall when this is going on. So the site is isolated with silt fence and asphalt berm. There's no traffic. They can't cross the berm because we've got the pump and pipe where we're collecting water at the low point here and pumping it back up into the project. So it looks like it's high risk, but the way it's set up, it's pretty low risk actually. So as long as the pump doesn't fail. So as a CESCL, this I would definitely check. I would talk to the contractor about the slopes. What's your plan? What's your timing for track walking and hydroseeding? I'd walk the silt fence and make sure it's secure. There's a ditch up there too. Walk the ditch line. Just make sure everything is functioning well before I would leave the site. Here's another, at this point, a very low risk, but I put this in actually. I just wanted to point something out that I don't see this done very much, but it's definitely something to consider and something to offer as advice to a contractor you're working with is if you know fence is going in at some point, encourage them to get the posts in as early as possible so that you can hydroseed and not have to go back in and tear up anything to put the posts in, which is what they did here. Of course, they installed all the posts, hydroseeded, they've got good stand of grass already, and then they'll go back in later and install the fence fabric, which is pretty minimally invasive to do. So, but overall, this is at this point in the project, it's a very low risk. In fact, I think everything now is draining into their permanent stormwater pond. So we've got gravel, grass, asphalt. In fact, I might even, I don't know, I'm not that familiar with the stormwater permit because the airport had their own, but for the airport, I would call this a stable site and I wouldn't inspect it anymore. Don't know how that works under this stormwater, the regs under ecology. Another large project, it's contained, it's got a 2-foot curb. Can't tell on the other side, but this one potentially is a source of track out, source of dust. And I would check any catch basins because there's going to be new catch basins connecting to existing. So I'd want to check those and make sure there's no possibility for dirty runoff going into a live system. So this definitely is more than a drive-by. This is a walk the site and make sure the perimeters are good and that there's no possibility for escape of water or sediment. As long as, and they are vacuuming, that's what the big tank setup is on the right. As long as this is kept clean as they go, and as long as the sandbags are secure, and there's no possibility for water to drain to a catch basin, this is, it's pretty quick work. They get, they'll pull up the asphalt here and then they'll have a low spot so that water could drain and infiltrate. So probably medium risk for a while and then low risk, although there is a gas can sitting there. So that has some potential if that got tipped over. Another native planting site. It's flat, it's planted, it's mulched. It's got coconut log or coconut fiber logs around the perimeter. So, excuse me. So again, at the port, under the Port of Seattle's permit structure, I would sign this off as a stable site and I wouldn't inspect it anymore. So this is really no risk at this point. This one is, they're using this low area for, excuse me, for any site runoff. They're actually pumping to it. As long as the water is infiltrating or they're hauling it off somewhere or sending it to sanitary so that the water doesn't build up and overflow into the outside curb line area. At this point, this is a low risk, but I would definitely work with the contractor on it just to make sure. I would investigate it, but I would talk to him and say, look, here's a potential. You got 2 inches of rain coming tomorrow. So what's your plan for dealing with the water as it builds up? A very high risk project, but at this stage, because the slopes are covered and there's a turbidity curtain and turbidity is contained, as long as the BMPs are functioning properly, this would be probably a moderate risk, but this type of project does demand a lot of attention. So I did actually, this was one of my projects. So I went by every day. I was out there every day for at least a little bit because of the potential. I mean, this is, there's a fishery in this river and any failures can be problematic with resource agencies. So it's inherently a very risky project, but at the time of this photograph, the risk is low. By the way, I'm going to go over on this. So again, this is recorded and will be posted on our YouTube channel. So if you need to drop off to get back and do some real work, that's cool. And I'll be sending out a link to the YouTube. Okay, this is a apartment building construction. They're doing some grading and getting ready to install some footings and stuff. Can't tell from the picture necessarily, but the corner of the silt fence closest to the bottom of the picture is the low spot. So anything draining off this slope is draining to the low spot. And again, you can't tell, but there is a sump pump there, and they're pumping to a tank up at the top of their property. So this is definitely one to watch. Also very inherently risky, but the BMPs are functioning and doing a good job. So there really is no discharge on this one. Small site, poorly managed. And this does drain down eventually, well, not too far, actually, about a block away into Puget Sound. So with enough rain, this is going to cause a plume out in the Puget Sound. So this actually, for being a small site, is a really risky site. And I would want to talk to the contractor quite a bit. Although I should point out, this is less than an acre, so it's not going to be covered under at least the Washington State Construction General Permit. But you also have to comply with city regs and county regs and that sort of stuff. So you still have to do erosion controls. So these kind of sites are challenging because you need access. So, you'd think maybe we can put the silt fence all the way around this dirt area. But then how do you access it? So definitely installing the silt fence correctly, maybe flipping it up a little bit so there's kind of a hook there to catch most of the site water. Does need a construction entrance, that sort of stuff. So, and another thing on these types of projects, the roof is put on, the fascias are put on, the gutters aren't necessarily put on right away. And it looks like on this one, they're not. So any roof drainage is going right onto the site and creating other problems. So, piping, getting the gutters in and piping it away from the project is always helpful. Okay, looks like we just had some rain. Future landscape area. Water is contained. There isn't evidence of stuff overflowing out into the parking lot to the right. One thing I am concerned about is the manhole left of center. I would want to investigate what that is. Is that an electrical manhole? Is it a storm or a sanitary sewer? Is there possibility for water escaping into a storm system? So this is one I would definitely, that's my car back there. So I did walk the site. Yeah. So this is a winter construction project. So again, this is one of those inherently risky type projects because of the time of year. So more than a drive-by, this probably demands a walk on a regular basis. At this point of the picture, though, the risk of problems is low. Driving up on this one, my first thought is, oh, great. They're pumping out high pH turbid water. And where is it going? In this case, it's actually just going to the other side of the mound in the center. So it's okay. It's all contained. But I always kind of tense up whenever I see a pump set up on a construction project. So because it's a large project, multi-year, inherently risky, but in this instance, everything is contained within the concrete foundations. So no problems. Even small projects have high potential sometimes. So contractor cored to put in fence posts and just left piles of dirt all over the place. And that is a roadway to the upper part of the picture with live storm system. So any of this runoff is going into storm and it's going in dirty. So at the point of this picture, this is a high risk, and I'm going to go track somebody down and say, hey, you need to get that cleaned up and swept up and such, and get it out of here. And think about, as you're progressing with the work, when you core the hole, put it in a wheelbarrow and get it out of here. Put it in a pile and cover it someplace else, but don't leave piles. Okay, so pumping out another, what are they doing? They're pumping, but the area is grassed. They're pumping mildly turbid water in the stormwater pond as construction is nearly finished. And they're pumping onto a piece of plywood. They're moving the plywood around so they don't kill the grass completely. But there's no possibility for scour from the pump or discharge flow. So this is a low risk, and having to go through so much grass, any turbidity that's in the water really isn't going to make it to the creek, which is about 100 feet away. This is kind of a funny one. So yeah, potential is high for track out here. Why the contractor didn't install rock all the way to the asphalt pad, I don't know. And why they're allowing people to park in the dirt and not on the asphalt, I don't know. So these are all things I would bring up with the contractor, just point out, you really should extend your rock and you really should find a better parking place for people. So you can see there's some track out already on the asphalt at the bottom, which means there's also track out going out of the site onto a streetway or street with live storm. Let's see, we got a chat here. Oh, would I recommend a wheel wash in this case? In this case, I would not, because it's an easy fix. And just in general, if you don't let your tires get dirty in the first place, you're not going to have track out. So this is really a project and site management issue that is easily corrected, easily prevented. So, however, if on this project, which is a multi-year, multi-season project, if the contractor was not being diligent, if the contractor pushed back, then I would insist on a tire wash, definitely. So and I just have to step back and say that my role at the Port of Seattle was a little bit different. I mean, I am a Cecil, I'm a CPESC, and I was tied directly to construction contracts. So I had some minimal authority to actually tell a contractor, what they had to do, and always receive backup from the resident engineer, construction manager, which is not probably the case if you're a third-party Cecil, or if you work for the contractor and you are their Cecil. It's going to be more challenging. So you kind of have to package this as it's going to save you money if you just do this, a couple loads of rock, and you're going to cut your sweeper time down, at $1,000 a day for a sweeper. So, just have to kind of package things sometimes, which I did also, but sometimes it was just, you need to do this. And sometimes my truck would break down in a construction entrance and work would stop until they did it. So anyway, hope that answered your question. This is putting in a bus stop. So they've cut out a section of asphalt and sidewalk, and they're going to rebuild this. The low spot is down where the excavator is, but they have an 8-inch lip between the dirt area and a potential for runoff. As long as water would be contained down by the excavator and not run over the lip. In fact, you could even dig a little bit of a hole down there to prevent that. So there is potential. Oh, and as long as they're keeping clean water from uphill from draining into their work area, that will help. So this has some risk, but depending on the time of year, how quick the work is, and whether they're containing the site water, this could be a drive-by inspection occasionally. Okay, I think that one's pretty obvious that there's extreme potential for discharge. Although with catch basins, storm systems, always check to see if they're live. This one happens to be live, so it's a problem. A lot of times on projects, of course, you're connecting new to existing, and the existing is probably going to be plugged for some period of time before the new system is signed off on and allowed to discharge. So if this is a plugged system that's somewhere downstream, then there isn't a discharge issue under the permit requirements, but you are going to have to clean out the system before you do pull the plugs. So like they say, that eyes are the windows of the soul. Catch basins are windows to the wetland. They're always a very high potential for problems. This one actually is, they're repaving. So, and the old grout and upper ring of the catch basin was damaged. So now it's wide open. This one, I don't remember if it's live or not, but this is kind of like when I see pumps set up, I always just tighten up when I see these kinds of things. And I ask questions. Is this a live system? And did you know that you're going to have to clean this out before you can turn it over to us? So got several of those. This is a little weep hole that contractors will install to keep the grade from flooding. So you can see in the corner there. So I look for those kinds of things. And it also tells me it's a live system. They want the grade to drain. It's live. This is a way to do it. So this would be get that plugged and don't discharge. On a bigger scale. So this is an addition to an existing system. It is not connected at any point yet. So at this point, it's just a low risk, keep it clean, but something to add to your checklist on this project to always check, ask questions, make sure the contractor is being diligent with these things. Because I've seen so many of these that have been live in this kind of situation where they're below, they're at grade, but they're in a hole and they just suck dirty water in. Like this one, as a matter of fact. So this is not grouted yet. There's pick holes that aren't grouted. So water that's building up here is going right into the system. Here's one that is extremely risky. And if you look at the date, and if you know the weather patterns in the Pacific Northwest, having this many acres, I think this was 80 acres, in this condition in October, late October, is a problem. And I did a presentation on this project a couple of years ago, which was just a total disaster. But this was the first year. They started late summer, or they started the summer of that year doing the grading and stuff, but didn't do any soil cover. So very risky project, surrounded by wetlands, creeks and such, and caused the contractor a lot of heartache and headache and loss of money. So this is one, this would be a challenging one if you're a CESCL on many levels, working with the contractor, having to push them to get stuff done. And maybe they didn't want to, and then getting in trouble with ecology, the contractor, or the owner. As a CESCL, you have some responsibility. So this is one that if I was the CESCL on this job and I wasn't getting any cooperation, which the person did not, I'd go find another job. This was a bad one. Another thing CESCLs, I think, should be able to do or need to do is review erosion plans and determine pretty quickly whether it's a workable plan. Now, this one, the backstory is this is a fill. There's 450,000 cubic yards of fill on this job. And I showed this slope earlier, this corner of this project. So it's a 90-foot elevation change from the bottom of the slope to the final elevation. But look where they put the sediment pond. This is their erosion plan. So the temporary sediment pond is on the top. So what this is saying is you have to install 90 feet of fill before you can put in your temporary sediment pond. That is not a workable plan. And not to go into what they should have done, but this is something as a Cecil to really look into and talk to the contractor, and because the contractor knows this, they're going to build it the way the plans show, but they know this is not going to work. So just be upfront about it and say, I don't know why this was done this way, but let's figure out how we can actually make all this work. Another multi-year project, inherently risky, but I won't go into all the details on it at this stage of construction, other than some track out. It was a really well-contained site. So as far as discharge from day to day, the risk was fairly low. But overall, there was always high risk that there could be problems on this just because of the nature of the work. So, it was compact area, lots going on. And yeah, so, I mean, you can see they're pouring concrete. Actually, I think they're filling drilled shafts. So you can see the Malcolm is back there drilling shafts. The concrete pump is out there. The excavator's working. I mean, there's just a lot going on. And it's all wet, which tells me this is probably spring or fall work. So inherently risky, needs to be watched all the time, and looking for ways to prevent anything discharging. I'm going to skip that one. I should have put this with the other erosion plans. So this was the final erosion plan submitted. We were too late to be able to change it. We had to get started on work. The problem with this one is this sediment pond. So this is a temporary sediment pond, and knowing that turbidity is not reduced significantly in a sediment pond, and since we have pretty strict standards, this is not a workable water management system during construction. So we made a lot of changes. I don't remember if I put pictures in here, but this was one of those, yeah, that's not going to work. So we need to work with the contractor and figure out what to do different to make it work. This is one that I drive by. It's not a job I worked on, but a lot going on here at this stage of construction. And there's this catch basin sitting there. Looks pretty naked. It's draining into a swale to the right, which is on the neighbor's property. So extremely high risk for discharge on this one. The road goes way up to the left. There's 30 acres up on top of the hill, and a lot of it's draining down. The stormwater pond is to the left behind the orange silt fence. So there's just a really high potential here for both discharge in the catch basin into the swale, but just down the road out to the main highway at the back of the facing the other way from where this picture was taken. So this turned out to be a good contractor. They were pretty diligent. This is summertime, so that cuts the risk some. And they did take care of stuff pretty well. So as a Cecil on this job, I would definitely work with the superintendent and just stay up on the scheduling, the phasing. What's their timing for having this thing rocked, paved, all that. What can we do about this catch basin? What can we do about all the water that's going to drain down? Can we set up a pump and pump back into the pond for later treatment or something? So this would be a challenging job for a Cecil to work, but it's doable. And again, they did a pretty good job on this. I just threw this one in here just because I used to work for the highway department, and I used to see this all the time, where no curbs, just Jersey barrier, and the scuppers at the base. There's 2 per Jersey barrier. Water drains through those and just slowly erodes the slope below. So just something to be aware of if you work road projects, highway projects. Real high potential, another subdivision. Look where the tire wash is. The loader is driving back into the site through the tire wash. And to the looking the other direction from this, where this picture was taken, is the road, almost right behind. So really high risk for sediment track out on this job. And as a CESCL on this project, it would be, I think it would be your responsibility to make sure this doesn't happen. Several ways to do that. One is, why is a tire wash so far back in the site? Why are vehicles being allowed to drive from dirt on one side across the exit, which should stay clean? Why is the exit not rocked completely? So I see I'm going to go way over on this. So hope some of you are hanging in there. As soon as you pave an area, then your risk of runoff is extremely high. And you can see what the potential is here. So it's great that there's asphalt down, but all of that runoff going down into this dirt area down the slope to the wetland on the right is not a good thing. So always keep in mind what's happening on a site. If you know a contractor is going to be paving on a project, on your project, walk it and see where the water is going to go when it's paved and make sure everything is secure like this. Similar situation, but as it turns out, because of the concrete foundation on the right, any water that drains off the road into this area is contained. So it's really more of a constructability issue for the contractor than it is a discharge issue. I think I've covered vacuuming. Should have vacuumed as they went, but you can see the track out going out. So real high potential. And there's a creek. The airport is surrounded by creeks, if you can't tell already. So we really had to be careful with this kind of stuff. Internal to the project, this is a large project. I don't remember the source of the water. It might have been a leaking water truck. So as far as discharge, as far as the permit goes, this is not a problem. It's only a problem if vehicles are driving through it and out onto the road. So that's, I've just put this in here as, is this a problem? Yeah, it could be. It could be a big problem, but it happens not to be because of where it's located on this project. And I always like to think of things like that. I don't want to be on a contractor about everything. I really try to think, is this a problem? Could it be a problem? What can I let go? And this would be something I would just, I keep an eye on it, and I talk to the contractor about it and say, just hey, watch this, keep an eye on it. But I wouldn't bug him about it really. Look for telltale signs like this. Oil all over the top of a manhole. What's going on here? Well, they actually had a light plant parked over this that was leaking and leaking and leaking. I had them pull the lid and there was product on the water in the manhole. So I don't know if anything got away down the system, but they had to clean this all out. But something to keep an eye on. Again, any kind of catch basin, manhole, anything that's a direct line to for water to leave the site is something that just you have to be really protective of. Different construction operations, you got your site done, you got your asphalt done, and then the landscapers come in and dump their soil on the asphalt. So now you've got a discharge problem again. So now this is summer work, so the risk was pretty low at this point. It was pretty quick work. And as long as they clean it up really well, then we're good. But if it rains, there's a real high potential for this to cause discharge. So just be aware of where the project is in its overall schedule and what's coming up. If you know that landscape work is coming up next week or something and it's going to rain, it gives you an opportunity to point that out at the weekly meeting and to talk to the landscapers and say, yeah, we don't want anything dumped on the asphalt unless you put it on plastic and cover it. So, okay, I haven't talked much about chemicals, and And although this is a safety can, they still can be tipped over into the water, and they can still be run over. So, this is a really high potential. This is right on the water, right on the dock. These should be kept away from the edge. They could, take your equipment to a fueling area would be better, and keep in secondary containment. So all things to point out to a contractor. Real high potential for track out on this one. Tire baths are not that great because they fill up with mud and then they get tracked out. Plus the approach is dirty. The approach into it and the exit out of it are dirty. So there's definitely track out from this one. This would be one to watch. This would be one to talk to the contractor about. This might be the last one actually, and this one was kind of fun. You see the dark soil. That's not asphalt. That's actually light gray gravel. And the reason that it's dark is because all of the product, or a lot of the product that was in this drum, was displaced out onto the surrounding area because the bung was not installed. And every time it rained, the stuff would be displaced out onto the ground. So, keep an eye. It's another thing for a Cecil to keep an eye on. It should be in secondary containment anyway, but there's always something to find like this on a project. And that's it. We've got some of you folks have hung in there. And if you want to keep going, if you have any questions, just drop in the chat and we can talk some more. Otherwise, we'll pull the plug. And again, our website is pnwcieca.org to access our YouTube channel and such. Oh, you're welcome, Jeff. Thank you. Appreciate that. And we also try to do these once a month. So also on our website, you'll see when the next one is. I think it's June 23rd. So you can check up on that too. Yeah, you're welcome, Tim. Thank you. And hope to have you guys in again soon. Oh, one last thing. If you have any ideas for things that you would like us to present, and we can get some people together. Oh, you are going to get certified. Maria, good. Okay, excellent. And you're welcome too. Or you can email, let us know what was I going to say? Anything that you would like us to do, I can email. Or you can contact us through the website. There's an email address. And with that, I guess no questions. So I will pull the plug. Xavier, thank you. And chat a bit about the CPESC and the advantage over a Cecil cert. So the CPESC is the certification of certifications for erosion control professionals. It does give you the ability to stamp erosion plans. It's not as it's not seen the same way as a PE stamp, of course, but many jurisdictions actually require a CPESC stamp on erosion plans or changes to erosion plans during construction, so modifications. So there definitely is advantage to getting the CPESC as far as that goes. For really day-to-day operations, I think a Cecil is good. Gives you a good, pretty solid background, and you recertify every 3 years. But also get as much other training as you can. That's one of the reasons we're doing these webinars. So yeah, I would say CPESC would be the one to get. Actually, you should get both, but CPESC is definitely good. I got mine finally, I think 4 years ago, 3-4 years ago, when I decided I was going to retire. It's like, I've been saying I'm going to do this for years. I'm finally going to do it. And believe me when I say it would be a lot easier to take the test and get a CPESC when you're not 65. The brain doesn't function quite as quickly or as well So if you're going to get a CPESC and you're, younger than me, which everybody is now, definitely do it. So hope that answers your question. I would do both, but if you had to choose, I would get a CPESC. Okay, anything else? Oh, and one last thing I should have said. This does, at this point now, qualify for 1.0 professional development hour credit. And if you need that certification, send me an email. The contact information is on our website, so pnwcieca.org, and I'll get you a certificate. So with that, anything else? All right, thank you all very much. I really appreciate your interest, and take care of yourselves. Adios.